Welcome to Spectral Shadows. This is the place where the stories don't just haunt your mind, they follow you into the dark. Before the whispers begin, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it? Midnight? Or closer to the hour when shadows move on their own? If you're brave enough to continue, prove it. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows and leave a comment with your time and location, so we'll know exactly where to find you. Now, let's open the door to tonight's nightmare. Story number 1. It started with quiet. I told everyone I was going off-grid for a few days, said I needed a reset, time away from screens. Mental health, I think I called it. It sounded better than the truth. The truth was I was burned out, pissed off, couldn't stand the sound of my own name in someone else's mouth. The group chats, the check-ins, the relentless flood of fake concern. I didn't want care. I wanted quiet. So I packed up the truck, loaded Bear in the back, and drove east into the Appalachians. 4 days. Just me, my dog, and the woods. No calls, no kids, no messages, no work, no world. Silence. But that was the thing about silence. Eventually, it always broke. I found a clearing I'd marked years ago. No signs, no service, nothing but moss and air, and an ancient pine standing like a cracked totem. Bear, my old retriever mix, never strayed far. He sniffed the perimeter once, then curled up near the fire. I watched the sky turn melt above the trees and let the quiet settle in my chest. I figured I'd sleep like a stone, but Bear didn't. That first night, I woke to him sitting upright, ears twitching. I sat up too. Something out there. He stared upward at the starry sky, cut apart by waving branches. I looked. 3 pale lights hovered over the ridge. Bright, steady, and far too still for planes. For a second, I actually smiled. I remembered the brown mountain lights. People swore they saw them dancing over the trees. Ghost lanterns, they said. Reflections. Static, trapped in the air. I'd spent the better part of my childhood out here, and I'd never seen them before. I realized my phone screen had lit up, and the flashlight had turned on by itself. Bear growled low in his throat. The light flickered once, then went dark. My damn phone's messing up, I said, picking it up and turning on the flashlight to see if it worked. No service, of course. No messages or calls. It'd be a good weekend. When I returned my attention to the sky, the lights were gone. The second night, Bear wouldn't eat. Wouldn't even lie down. He kept pacing to the tree line and freezing like he was listening to something. I sat by the fire, flipping through old photos on my phone. One of them was of Mom standing next to Bear, her hand on his scruff. I'd taken it the year before she died. Fog had crept in, rolling low. Then I saw it, something shifting behind the clouds. Massive, slow, a shadow painted against the bright clouds. Bear let out a bark so sharp it snapped me out of my trance. The shape was gone. Bear didn't stop pacing. And that night, neither of us slept. The third day was wrong. The air was stale. My food didn't taste right. No flavor. I made coffee and tried to act normal. It tasted metallic. This was what I wanted. Quiet. There were no birds, no insects, not even wind. It felt like the whole forest was listening. That evening I saw a figure between the trees. Tall, distorted, shimmering like heat over pavement. The second I looked straight at it, gone. But Bear barked once and took off. I chased him up the ridge with the flashlight swinging wild in my hand. He stopped just before the edge, staring up at the sky. I followed his gaze, and everything broke. The sky tore open. Light moved across it like veins of fire. Then came the sound. It reverberated in my skull. Voices, crying, screaming, singing. I don't even remember running. Just white-knuckle panic and Bear's tail in the dark. We made it to the truck. Don't ask me how. The engine barely caught. I reversed so hard I lost one of my mirrors on a tree. The lights were above. A sky twisting like someone's crappy wallpaper. Just color moving around. I kept driving. Bear barked louder and louder. 20 minutes later, the phone lit up. Reception, 4 bars. Then everything exploded. Missed calls, messages, voicemails, dozens. Dad, how's the trail? Dad, you feed that dog? Anne, our son is going to get himself killed. Anne, something is outside. I clicked off the messages and opened the voicemails. I played the first one. My sister's voice. Mason, where are you? Just, please, please call me. Static. I played the next. My brother. Mason, Christ man, get your kids out of Pittsburgh. I nearly slipped off into a ditch. I cursed and jerked the wheel, righting the truck. Marie, forget the cat. We have to go. Marie. A crash cut him off, so loud that it fuzzed the audio. The voicemail ended. I fumbled with my phone, clicking through voicemails. Anne, nothing but sobbing, broken only by violent coughs and a faint scream in the background. Then, static. I dialed Anne's number as the trees thinned out. And then I saw it. Pittsburgh, or what was left of it. At first it looked normal. From a distance, lights, streets, a faint hum of motion. But the lights above weren't normal. They hung in the air, massive and pulsing. And the people, they were rising. Dozens of them at first, then hundreds. I blinked hard, convinced it was some optical illusion, a trick of distance, maybe my brain shorting out from too little sleep. But the shapes were human, arms limp, heads tilted slightly, faces slack. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles popped. No, I said out loud. No, no, no. Bear whined in the back seat. I couldn't stop watching, and then they came apart. Just a sudden collapse into dust, hundreds of bodies gone in an instant, turned to ash. It poured. The first flakes hit the windshield like hail, gray. I turned on the wipers. They dragged thick streaks across the glass. I could see bits of hair, fragments of cloth caught in the slush. Skin? Teeth? My stomach turned. I gagged into the crook of my elbow and started rolling up my window. Too late. It rushed through. The stuff clung to everything. My jacket, my hair, the dashboard. The vents started sucking it in, blowing it in my face like cremation on high. I pawed at the controls, turning off the fan, trying not to scream. I looked back at the skyline, what was left of it. The lights pulsed again, slow and sure, and more people kept rising. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. The truck hit the ditch and everything spun. I dangled by my seatbelt, groaning. Nothing really hurt, but everything ached. Bear shifted around in the back while I reoriented myself. My phone rang. Anne. I stared at her smiling face and answered. It started with a scream, shrill and raw. I flinched, holding the phone away from my face. Bear panicked and scrambled against the upholstery, trying to bury his face beneath the seat. Then came her voice, not shaken, not panicked, soft, sweet, too sweet, like syrup dripping into my ear. Mason? Anne, are you okay? No, Mason. They got the house. The boys. They're... Anne, what happened? Coughing. Anne. Mason, the boys are gone. They're in the air. Everyone is in the air. I watched the sky, gray pouring down. It hurts so much. God. My voice broke on the word. I'm coming, Anne. I'll... Naked. Naked I shall return. The line went dead. The quiet returned. The quiet I wanted so badly. But now, I knew it would last far longer than I'd ever planned for. Story number 2. 24 hours into my shift, I was tired, exhausted. My eyelids dragged shut of their own accord, and every time they closed, strange patterns crawled in the dark behind them, writhing like things alive. Just one more note, I told myself, and I'd be free to go home. I typed the last of the vitals, closed the laptop, and considered whether I should eat before collapsing into sleep. My body begged for food, but the thought of swallowing anything filled me with unease. Still, I rose and began the slow trek down the stairs toward the cafeteria. The hospital at dawn is unlike any other place. The lights hum like insects, trapped behind the ceiling tiles. Shadows lean across the sterile floors, and every cough, every shuffle, echoes far too loudly in the corridors. That was when I saw her. In the lobby, a woman slumped in a wheelchair. Her skin was waxen, her hair slicked to her temples with sweat. Her eyes, half-lidded, unfocused, reflected nothing, as if light itself recoiled from them. A man stood behind her, glancing between her face and the indifferent receptionist at the desk. I could have kept walking. I wanted to. My stomach twisted with hunger, my bones ached with fatigue, and yet something about her made turning away impossible. I stepped closer. My pulse quickened with each stride. The man noticed me first. "Doctor, please." My wife, Amanda, she was nauseous this morning. Her doctor gave her an admission order, but while we were waiting, she got worse. They gave me a wheelchair, but... His words blurred. My attention was fixed on Amanda. Her lips moved, forming broken, animal sounds. I pressed my fingers to her wrist, searching for the reassuring throb of life. What I found was not reassuring. Her pulse stuttered beneath my fingertips. 30 beats per minute, irregular, like the faint ticking of some clock winding down. Her breath rattled, her skin damp and clammy. Her eyes fluttered, then rolled slightly upward. Shock. In the middle of the lobby, surrounded by people, no one had noticed she was dying. I looked at the receptionist, who barely glanced up from her screen, irritation etched across her face. Rage flared in me, though I didn't recognize it as my own. It felt borrowed, implanted. Without thinking, I ordered the man to follow me and wheeled his wife toward the emergency department. We did not run. Running would have turned the moment into chaos. Instead, we walked, slowly, as though in a procession. I asked questions, illnesses, medications, history, but my voice trembled. I am only an intern, I thought. If she goes into a systole now, I'll have to... I stopped the thought. I did not want to imagine CPR in that long hallway, under the humming lights. We reached the ER doors. I cut through the man's explanation to the receptionist. "Code red, Brenda. Open the doors. Now." She obeyed, and the doors yawned wide. Inside, the attending roused from half-sleep, and within moments the room filled with nurses, monitors, voices. We laid Amanda down, wires snaking across her body, screens flickering with numbers that painted her death in real time. Heart rate 30. Blood pressure 60/30. Respirations shallow, uneven. Her husband spoke of nausea, of vomiting blood earlier that morning. I pried her mouth open, saw the black crust of dried blood on her tongue and teeth. The smell that poured out was not merely iron and bile. It was ancient, rank, the kind of scent one imagines seeping from catacombs unopened for centuries. Her abdomen was distended, rigid, silent as stone. I pressed my stethoscope to her flesh, and for a moment I imagined I could hear something. Not the hush of peristalsis, but a faint, whispering murmur. as though the body contained not organs, but voices. The monitor beeped, 29 beats per minute. "Atropine now," the attending barked. The nurse obeyed. The numbers crawled upward, reluctantly, like a creature stirred from slumber. 30, 31, 37, 40. Amanda moaned, each sound leaving her in a rhythm too precise, too ritualistic, like prayer to some forgotten god. I leaned toward the attending. "It may be a perforated ulcer." He ordered an ultrasound. The black and white image revealed free fluid throughout her abdomen. She was bleeding, drowning in herself. She would need surgery. "Go fetch the chief," he told me. I obeyed. The chief came, looked once at the monitor, then made a call. "As soon as she's stable, we'll stop the bleed." 30 minutes later, Amanda was deemed stable enough for the OR. As we wheeled her down the corridor, I felt the walls draw closer, the fluorescent lights flickering as though dimmed by her presence. In the operating room, I introduced myself to Dr. Roberts, who led the case. He nodded. "We'll need your hands. Dr. Brown will assist as second surgeon." We scrubbed, donned gowns, and began. When the first incision was made, a smell erupted, not the acrid tang of cauterized flesh, but a stench older, heavier. It clawed its way into our sinuses, made our eyes water. It smelled of earth, of graves, of something left to rot in silence for centuries. We opened her abdomen. Darkness spilled forth. Blood black as tar oozed from within, but it was not merely fluid. It was alive in its stillness, drinking in the light, bending the edges of the room. We worked deeper. The cavity stretched unnaturally, as though her body contained more space than it should. Dr. Roberts and Dr. Brown lifted the intestines out and pressed them into my hands. I should have felt the gentle rhythm of peristalsis. Instead, the coils twitched in violent, jagged spasms, as if something inside them struggled to escape. Sweat soaked my mask. My heart stuttered. I gripped the mass with trembling fingers, desperate not to drop it. Then it erupted. Intestines, blood, feces burst outward, not with the chaos of an accident, but with the inevitability of birth. The room was drenched. My glasses saved my eyes, but when I wiped them clear, the sterile field was gone, drowned in filth. The others stood frozen, their faces twisted in horror. They had no eye protection. Their eyes were wide, staring, reflecting the impossible sight before us. Amanda's abdomen had become a mouth. It widened, stretched, and from it poured not organs, but something else, something that bent the room. The lights bent toward it. The floor seemed to ripple beneath it, and the walls bowed inward. It was not a form, but many. Faces melted together, mouths opening and closing, tendrils writhing and splitting into anatomies unimagined. It was intestines, and it was not. It was flesh, and it was something older than flesh. The thing touched the surgeons, and they did not scream. They did not blink. They simply froze, their pupils swallowed by black. The door opened. Someone entered, drawn by the noise. That sound broke my paralysis. I fled. I ran until my lungs seared, until bile rose in my throat, until I collapsed heaving in the corridor. Now the surgeons lie in the ICU, comatose. Their faces are still twisted in the same grotesque shapes I saw in the OR, as though frozen mid-horror. Their bellies swell. Sometimes they twitch in unison, in rhythms I do not recognize, yet I feel in my bones. They ask me what happened. The chiefs, the attendings, the nurses. But even if I spoke, they would not believe. I know this much. Amanda was never the patient. She was the vessel, and what we released that night was not meant to be seen by human eyes. Story number 3. It was the itching that was the worst. A few days of non-stop itching. Then one morning, it was a little thing growing on my back. Felt like a nipple, if a nipple was oozing pus and blood, and sent shooting pain up my body when I touched it. It sat right above the waist of my pants. I spent my whole day contorting myself into a pretzel to try to claw away at whatever was happening back there. I couldn't help but squeeze it. It felt good to press my fingers together. Feel the pain as the liquid threatened to blast through my skin. Feel the hard lump of whatever was under the surface, waiting to emerge. Every so often I'd feel a squish and a pop, and my fingers would get slick and damp, come away with blood or a bit of yellow-white pus, almost cream, and the itching would subside for a minute, and then the itching would start again. Eventually I got accustomed to the circular timing of it. Itch, scratch, itch, scratch, pop, gush, slick, relief, itch. When I got home, I looked at it in the mirror, raised patch of skin, and maybe 3 centimeters across, and red, violently red, crusted in blood and pus. Then I noticed something I wasn't expecting. Hair, coarse dark hair, ingrown hair, I thought. Simple. Happened before, you yank it out, infection clears, Bob's your uncle. I got my tweezers and worked at it for a while, but I couldn't get a good grasp. After a half hour of working this tiny metallic torture device all around the hole in my back, I gave up and asked a professional for help. I rapped on my neighbor's door. "Tony? Come in, mate." Tony was waking up from a nap. "Tony, this is well, it sucks, but I need your help." "What's up?" "I've got something stuck in my skin. I need you to help get it out." "All right, mate. Show us what you've got." I turned, lifted my shirt. "Wow, well, I'd better get some gloves." "Come on in." "Real sorry, mate. I'll owe you a sixer." "For this, I'll take it." We're in Tony's bathroom, which is spotless. Tony's a medic, which is why I knew he'd be bloke for the job. He's got tweezers and gauze and fluids, and I don't know what else. This is gonna hurt. I've got to get in there to excise any infectious tissue. What you reckon it is? If you're lucky, just a blocked hair follicle. If not, screwworm, maybe. Tony smiled, a mischievous smile. Screwworm? Yeah, the larvae burrow into wounds. Turn like screws to dig themselves in. Mean suckers. Hurts like hell coming out. You know, they can lay up to 500 eggs. Not helping, mate. I think I got something. I watched as Tony used tweezers to yank on the hair. He pulled, and it opened. Blood burst from the wound, splashing Tony's mirror, sink, and the face shield he wore. Nice. Look at that. Tony kept pulling. 1 slickly red strand of hair becoming 2, then a dozen, then a handful of hair coming out of a ragged, open, bloody hole above my ass. He pulled and pulled until his sink was full of sopping wet, blood-drenched black hair. Then he started digging with a finger, and I started to scream. Eventually, he pulled his hand out of the hole in back. He held something up in his fingers, studying it. "What in the world?" Through clenched teeth, I spat. "What is that?" "We've got to get you to the hospital, mate." "This is something else. It's a tooth." I pulled out a tooth. In the operating room, numbed from the spine down. My whole naked backside being worked on by a mess of doctors. One of them asks, "Were you born via IVF?" "No idea, Gov." I mean, the only reason for this much organic material to occur at this site would have to be a chimera, right? Another one speaks up. Would make sense, wouldn't it? It's not like he ingested it. I try to turn to catch an eye. What would make sense? A third says, but fetal death almost always happens in utero. For it to have developed and grown this much, I would assume that he would have had tumorous growth. Have you had tumors in your midsection before? Not that I know of. Please tell me what's going on. I believe, and we'll have to look into it. I think you must have absorbed a twin, a parasitic twin that's been growing inside you for your whole life. A twin that burst out of you today like it was being born. Story number 4. I've never been much of a people person. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone's business. I heard the snickers behind my back, how my dad had run out on my ma. The prevailing theory around the schoolyard was he left because I was a weirdo with a lisp and greasy hair. The adults were more subtle in their cruelty. "Oh, I bet if you stopped hunching so much, you'd be a strapping young lad," was one I heard a lot. I didn't care about any of that, though. I had my anime. I remember the first show I ever watched. Channel 22 was local news most days. Lenier, whose hairpiece seemed to devour more and more of his scalp with every broadcast, would bray on and on about local politics and the weather. But Saturdays, Channel 22 was for the boys. I would wake up at the crack of dawn and race down to the den and plop myself down in front of the soapbox. I would crank up the tunes and space out while I scarfed down whatever bowl of concentrated sugar my mother had bought that week. After a time, she would peek her head into the den. I would have to shield myself from the rays of sun that came with her intrusion. "Honey, don't you think you've watched enough TV today? It's beautiful out. Why don't you head to the beach and play with your little friends?" she said in an ear-gratingly sweet tune. "You know the sun makes my rosacea flare up. The doctor said so," I responded, my gaze not leaving the hypnotic visages of cartoon bunnies. "Yes, dear." My mother smiled and silently closed the den door in defeat. With that annoyance dealt with, I could enjoy my programs in peace. Then something new, a parade of flashing lights and piercingly high voices. A skinny girl with twin tails and a schoolgirl outfit danced onto the screen. She flashed a smile and batted her oversized oval eyes at me. I was hooked. My love affair with the Eastern arts ballooned from there. I collected as much merch as possible to share my passion with the world. I'm talking about ill-fitting shirts and out-of-print collector's edition DVDs. My fellow students did not take kindly to my new hobby. I was met with disgust and vicious mockery. I was branded an outcast for life, so quick they didn't even clean the wound. But I didn't care. I had my anime. High school came and went, and I was finally free to stay at home and search for new releases. Money was no object. Whatever my mother refused to pay for, it was covered by my part-time job that was mostly remote. It was just making cold calls, but it paid a hefty amount. Eventually, I got an auto-dialer to make them for me, and I focused 100% of my time on my shows. That idea worked too well, actually. I was eventually rewarded Employee of the Month and offered a full-time gig at the call center. I declined naturally and was simply given a pat on the back and told to keep up the good work. Time passed, and my shrine to the east grew. I began collecting figures of certain characters. The first was that twin-tailed beauty, of course, but she was joined by the rest of her squad soon enough. There's something so delicate to these figures, often frozen forever in a single PVC-filled pose. I handled each and every one with care. My room was adorned with them. I started with a single display shelf. My father had built it for me when I was young, no doubt holding on to a ridiculous notion I would fill it with various athletic accolades. The Moon Warrior was placed there with care, her sturdy plastic smile forever brightening my day. I would admire that altar nightly, though I soon grew bored with the same dead eyes looking at me, though. So I moved on to the next show and collected more. Soon my room became a resin temple, adorned on all sides by 9-inch anime girls. At first I tried to organize them by show, but as it became more and more about praising my waifus, I decided to keep my favorites close to me. I slept on a king-size mattress surrounded by my queens. But I suppose you aren't here to hear about my hobbies. You're here to learn about its ruination. It started after my latest purchase. I had been in a bidding war for a rare swimsuit variant Eva figure. It was close, but I had outbid buyer Tuck by about $7. I was feeling pretty pleased with myself, despite the flood of furious DMs by Tuck. "You slimy little shit, how dare you? Can't let me have just one thing, you disgusting hoarder. I'll get you for this one way or another." At the time, they didn't bug me. I thought them a tad melodramatic, though I had been known to fly off the handle myself if I lost one of my girls to another. But when my prize arrived, I noticed something was off. There was a little bit of Askua's arm chipped off, right near her shoulder. My heart sank. I had been gypped. Disappointed, I put Askua in the back with the rest of the defects. My fallen idols, as it were. Tucked away near my closet was a small shelf for the ones missing paint or were damaged goods. I took a look at the island of misfit toys and shuddered as I did. The amount of money I had wasted on these rejects. Ah well. That night I tucked myself in after a long day of catching up on Goblin Slayer and drifted off to a restless sleep. As I entered La La Land, I thought I heard a soft giggle. I jolted awake, blinking the weary out of me as I looked around for the source of the faint noise. There was nothing but thousands of tiny shadows surrounding me. Usually the sight of my idols was a warm comfort, but in that late hour, I felt disturbed at their lifeless gaze. Painted eyes stood watch over me, and I felt an aura of disgust around them. I tried to push these feelings out of my mind, focus on getting some rest. As I slept, I heard hisses and shrill laughter, cruel whispers directed at me, encircling me like a siege. "Look at him. Watches cartoons all day, like it's his job. His skin is ghostly pale, yet so blotchy. Ick. I swear if I have to watch him fiddle with his little joystick one more time. Least you aren't in the splash zone. Ugly little man. Should just put him out of his misery. Hold him down and stick it to him." This went on the whole night, the conspiring voices. Every time I moved or snored, the voices would hush up. There was nothing but them, my tormenting goddesses. Surely they couldn't be mocking me. They were different. They were all I had. I awoke the next morning to a light knock on my door. Ma poked her head in, her hair a fraying silver, and winced as she saw me. "Ray, honey, do you think maybe you could tidy up a little around here? It's starting to smell like eggs a little." I rolled my eyes at her and heaved myself away from her judgment. "Later," I said through wheezed respiration, my body struggling to awake. "Okay, honey, love you," she said in her condescending way. I grunted in response as she left me, shrouded in darkness once more. Eventually, I climbed out of bed and studied my surroundings. My floor was cluttered with discarded laundry and half-filled bottles. My desk was covered in a cavalcade of wadded-up tissues and crinkled bags of chips. I failed to notice any foul scent and decided Ma was just being her usual neurotic self. I flipped my auto-dialer on and watched some monster museum to pass the time. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed some of my girls were missing. I leapt to my feet, my frantic steps thundering across the sea of clutter. I was missing my twin-tailed queen, as well as Mai and Faye. Had Ma come in here during the night? She was always shooting me disapproving looks about my collection. In my search, I kept hearing this clattering sound, like something was scurrying around in the walls. In a huff, I stormed out of my room and raced to confront Ma. I found her doing the dishes, and she flinched when she saw me angrily sputtering. What's wrong, hun?" she said, forcing a cheerful smile. "Did you go into my room while I was sleeping?" I accused. "I'm missing pieces of my collection." She gave me a vacant look in response. "No, dear, I know how much you value your private time." She stuttered at me, avoiding my scornful look. She was lying. That's why she couldn't bear to look at me. I smirked at her pitiful display. "Right. They better turn up. That's all I'm saying." She recoiled at my words, and I left her to toil in the sink. When I entered my room, I was greeted by a sharp pain in my ankle. I screamed and batted the ground with a frantic swat as I hopped over to the bed. I heard the pitter-patter of tiny toes scrambling across the floor as I did. I flopped down. The bed cried out in mournful pain. A blotch of red had bubbled up on my ankle, the wound already turning a purple hue. I scratched at it and wiped it off with one of the crusty socks lying around my bed. Satisfied, I looked around for my assailant. I could hear it scuttling about like a roach. Taking a quick glance around the room, I noticed more of my shelves laid bare. The remaining idols stood there, their glazed-over faces mocking me in their eternal grins. I spent the rest of the day searching for my missing figurines. I didn't find them, of course, and it seemed like every time I turned around, more would up and vanish. I turned in early, convinced a good night's rest would clear this whole mess up. The voices started around midnight. They were all around me, chattering nails in my ears. They were laughing at me, boasting about their liberation. I tried to get up and confront them, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed. All I could do was stare at the ceiling as the squeaking voices closed in. The way he talks to that poor woman really burns me up. All that money, and he spends it on us instead of helping her. Doesn't even appreciate us. He's chucked half of us away to the corner of shame. My hair wasn't quite the right shade of violet. Guess that means I wasn't good enough for the big shelf. Big shelf for the big boy. We'd all be better off. Cut him now. Hey, just tie a little knot. Yes, tonight. The vile things gleefully applauded my coming demise. I still couldn't move. I felt coils strapped around my plentiful forearms. I struggled in vain against perfectly wrapped strings of rope tying me down. I could feel belts of oppression slapped against my bulky frame. All around me were impish figures, shrouded in inky silthows. They varied in size and girth. I could hear them whisper to each other as they crowded around. I could hear them scuttling like vermin in the walls around me, like frayed fingertips on the board their plastic claws burrowed deep. One of them jumped onto my belly. I saw the ripples flow, and it clopped towards me. It was a figure of a voluptuous centaur, her golden hair flowing in a static pose. She wielded a makeshift spear made of a crocked paperclip and a rusty nail. She held a stern expression on her face, this sculpted beauty. The resin crowd cheered at her arrival, chanting her name like a gladiator of old. I raged against my binds to no avail as the centaur strolled towards me. All around me were high-pitched voices consumed with bloodlust. Kill, 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 they chanted. In the corner of my room, the broken ones were thunderous in their cries. Their wiry frames and exposed parts jiggled as they cheered my would-be assassin on. My face strained as with all the strength I could muster. I yanked my doughy wrist against my restraints. I could feel the burn as they dug in, staining my flabby tissue with carpet burns and bruises. With a cry of thunder, I finally pulled free, the snap of my liberation echoing in the dank bedroom. The centaur paused its advance, but only slightly. I lunged towards it as I pulled myself forward, the restraints falling to pieces as the crowd hissed and scattered. It was then I realized how much they had been corrupted and changed. Their faces remained the same, yet evil and carnage radiated off their preserved visages. Their oval eyes moved on their own, rolling around their bulbous heads as they scuttered around the walls. They clung to the wood paneling like their faux lives deepened on it. I could hear them tunneling in the bones of my home. I grabbed the centaur and winced as it dug the tiny spear into my flesh. It was a feeble yet determined attempt, each blow a little prick that oozed crimson as she struggled in my grasp. I tanked the assault and whipped the centaur against the wall. She hit with a hideous smack and limped to the ground. One of her legs had popped off the frame, and she was struggling to get up, cracks forming her once magnificent body. I stared at the display wordlessly, my heart beating faster than it had ever my entire life. I glanced at my wrist and saw the deep burn that had embedded itself. I stumbled out the bedroom and waddled to the bath, hoping there was still some cleaning alcohol. I could still hear them. The scratching the walls only intensified as I scrubbed my hands raw in the basin. They were all after me now, all cramped in the walls like a raging river. I could hear their voices crystal clear in my ear. I'd like to feed him to my harpies. So mean to us, we just wanted to play. Vile villain, you'll toil away in the afterlife for this. We're gonna get you, Ray. Watch your back. Shut up. I finally screamed at the wretches. The voices laughed at my rage and taunted me further. That damn scratching was infuriating. It was like they were termites chewing away at the life of the house. If they tunneled deep enough, they'd collapse the place on me. Ray, is something wrong, dear? I heard Ma weakly call from her bedroom. Go back to bed, Ma. I roared at her. I was met with silence as the voices denounced my treatment of her. I stormed back to my room and slammed the door. I spent the rest of the night, and every night since, watching the walls. The shelves are bare for the first time in years. The only thing they collect is dust now. I haven't left my room. I know they'll set a trap for me if I leave. They've said as much. I can hear the little rascals skittering in the drywall, even now. They whisper their vicious lies to me every night, but I keep watch. The second I take my eyes off the walls, I know they'll emerge from the paneling and take their cut of meat. Sometimes when I'm drifting off, I'll feel a sharp pain followed by a ghastly giggle. The sores appear on my back, on my shins. Damned vampires, the lot of them. They prick and slash whenever they can, a little reminder that I am their prisoner. I won't let them get me, my once prized possessions. Ma used to knock on the door, begging me to come out. She hasn't come for some time. For the better. For all I know, her knocking was an attempt on my life. I can hear them plotting. They're gonna spike what little water I have left. I already threw it away. That'll teach them. Despite how dry my throat is, it's worth it just to spite them. I'll hold out a little longer. I'm sure I'll think of something. The voices won't get me. I'm too smart for that. Story number 5. I had something odd happen to me about 14 or so months ago, and I've been thinking about it over and over again ever since. I figure the beginning of October is as good as any to tell this story, because it's freaky, and best of all, it's a real thing that happened to me. It's a short story, so sorry to those of you who like longer reads. I'm also wondering if anyone else has ever ran into this. So I worked for a major retailer as a floor employee at the time. It's a home improvement store. I won't say which one, because I'm sure you can already guess. I have a lot of interaction with customers because I'm a salesperson on the floor. My job is go around and bother people as they are shopping and try to push some product or service they don't need and make sure I complete some quota. I talk to a lot of weird people. Everyone who has ever worked in retail and interacted with the public has, so I know you all know what I'm talking about. Crazy religious ladies, weird tweakers, rude Karens, old men who get confused about what you just told them. I met a guy one day, and he caught my eye because he was wandering around with this look on his face. We were near the front of the store. He was wearing camouflage, was pretty dirty, and his eyes looked wide open. He had this plain look on his face, not like he was depressed or bored or out of it, but just a neutral look. He was wandering aimlessly through the store, and he didn't seem busy, so I decided I'd talk to him and see if I couldn't get a name for my quota. I roll up, and I introduce myself to him. He looks at me, then looks out into space as I'm talking to him. He wasn't really responding, but I do my usual pitch, and I get to the end and ask him if he'd be interested. I hand him a flyer, then ask him for his name and number. He takes the flyer, still staring off into space, and without looking at me, says, "You know there are aliens, right?" I get really caught off by this, and I respond by saying, "Excuse me, yeah, aliens. I was a part of the military. I'm a veteran. I'm homeless right now, but that's because I wouldn't do what they said." I stare at him. He glances over at me. They keep telling me not to tell people this. I've had military commanders and CIA agents tell me that they'll lock me up if I keep doing it, but I don't really care. I've seen them with my own eyes. It's horrible. I am at a loss for words, but nod my head awkwardly. Yeah, they control almost everything. I have seen things so terrible you wouldn't believe me. I know I sound crazy, but it's true. Our government has known for decades. I'm pretty freaked out at this point while he's talking. You ever get that crawling sort of feeling in the back of your neck? The kind of feeling you get when you find yourself strangely but deeply afraid. I've never felt it before that conversation. He continued, "They've been working with them. They didn't have any choice. This way none of us suffers as much. Ignorance is bliss, but we soldiers are sometimes told about it. We have to monitor their ships." I felt like I was gonna throw up, and I don't know why. I think it's the way he delivered all of this information to me. He was deadpan, not an ounce of wavering, or any hint he was messing with me. He's just so upfront about it, and it's clear he has nothing to lose. He just kept going. "Did you know there's a machine that can get us to Mars in 6 hours? 6 hours. They have a diplomatic base there. I know you think I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. I've never been the same since I saw it. I can't keep a job. I'm on drugs now because of it. Mostly meth. Was kicked out of the military early because of my big mouth. But I don't care. I don't care anymore what happens to me. People need to know." Now there are two distinct possibilities. Either one, based on him telling me he's on meth. He's a homeless veteran dude who happens to be going through an episode of psychosis. Or two, he's telling me the truth, or at least what he is absolutely certain is the truth. Either way, I have never been more unnerved by a customer interaction in my life. I've talked to crazy people before. My mother was an alcoholic, and she used to say crazy shit all the time. My aunt is into conspiracy theories and has gone on rants. We have a family friend who is the same way, and I've heard her rant. This was not crazy. Or if it was, it's the kind of crazy where the person is dead certain of what they saw. Either this dude is 100% certifiably batshit insane, or he's telling me the truth. There's no other explanation. I tell him thank you for the story, and that I'm not sure what I believe. But I hope things go okay for him. It won't get better for me. They'll come for me at some point. Oh well, my wife has left me. My kids think I'm insane. I have nothing left to lose. Everything is fucked. He walks off and goes up to the cashier at the front desk area where they do the returns. He starts telling her the same story. I was thoroughly frightened by this guy. I told him the truth. I'm not sure what I believe. I ignored everything and tried to push my fear down and continue with my day. I kept working that day and filed it away under being just another weird interaction I've had at work. A few months after that interaction, a co-worker tells me about how Congress had a public, bipartisan meeting regarding an apparent secret executive branch program that has intelligence and information about extraterrestrials. Apparently, this project has been active for decades. I've read some of the files alleged by the former government workers who are attesting this, and it's scary. The program apparently was called Immaculate Constellation. Apparently, they've interacted with and met with several kinds of extraterrestrials. We've been monitored by them for years. UFO crashes, Humanoid non-terrestrial beings were found. Detailed descriptions and investigations into real, actual UAP incidents with the Air Force. Look this stuff up. It's real. And this story, despite being on this area of this site, I promise you, is real. I really had an interaction with a customer like this. I swear to God, I think about some of the experiences I've had as a kid, looking out into the fields in the countryside and seeing odd things floating in the wind. Odd shapes and metallic objects without explanation. One evening, getting up and watching a bright blue metallic object fly over my house and disappear over the horizon. I always thought I just had a very active imagination and just saw a passenger plane fly low over my house. And those videos the Biden administration released, there must be a logical explanation for it. Something we have yet to discover. Or maybe enemy aircraft with advanced technology we aren't aware of. And that guy? Well, I mentioned he was on meth. Dude was probably crazy. I hope. At least that's what I like to tell myself anyways. You've reached the end. But the shadows haven't left you. If this story unsettled you, prove you survived. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows, and leave a comment with the part that haunted you most. The darkness is always waiting, and so are we. Until next time, don't turn off the lights.